Are you in a band? Are you an entertainment entrepreneur? Are you a musician, songwriter, or producer? Or are you wanting to start a career in the music industry? If so, then this podcast is for you. On the Do That Music Thing podcast, we'll be interviewing subject matter experts, artists, and other leaders in the music industry to identify actionable strategies to move you forward in your career, spark some inspiration, and at the least just have some fun talking about music. So let's get to it and do that music thing. Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Do That Music Thing podcast, where we're interviewing everyone from label heads, managers, artists, songwriters, producers, radio promoters, you name it, anyone in the music industry that is making waves and being successful. So on this wonderful morning, I have the amazing Matt Freedman. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. Matt is an incredible country music artist, songwriter, guitar player, Renaissance man, if you will. And I have had the absolute honor of getting to co-write with Matt, and it's been a pleasure. So I'm really just glad that we get to talk about, your story and talk about music.
Same, man. Thank you for having me. It's been way too long that we've been trying to get together and doing this and, being dads and having full-time lives and stuff. I'm sorry that all that got in the way, but I'm glad we finally made it. We've landed the plane and we're here. So looking forward to it, brother.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's jump right in. Every podcast, the first thing I like to talk about is the person's journey. How did you, Matt Freedman, get to where you are today as an artist and songwriter? Let's take it all the way back to the beginning.
Oh man. How much time you got? Jeez. I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm an old man. I'm 38 years old. I got 3 young kids. I got a wife at home, a beautiful 10-year-old chocolate lab. So I'm a family man first and foremost, just like you. But my journey was weird, man. I grew up being a drummer. I was a drummer for about 10 years. I played in country bands, rock bands, pop punk bands, emo bands, you name it. Grew up on trying to become Travis Barker, in between a Travis Barker and a Carter Beauford from Dave Matthews Band. So growing up, drums was really my thing. I would throw the headphones on with the little Sony boombox right next to my $125 CB drum kit that was all my parents could afford at the time. And that was my escape. That was my temple, my sanctuary, whatever you want to call it, growing up. I would just go in that basement, throw those headphones on. And I know, like you're a Stone Temple Pilots fan. I grew up throwing that album on and just letting it all lash out. So that was maybe from when I was about 10 to, 18 or so. My mom then got me a guitar when I was 12 for my 12th birthday. Just a little Epiphone acoustic. And we threw, the little middle school band together and we would jam and try to, think we were heroes and, just do it strictly for the chicks at the time. All the while, I was a coach's kid. So my dad was a total jock and an athlete. So I grew up playing sports and, that landed me a football scholarship in college. And on one play, I was a quarterback and I blew out my PCL and my MCL meniscus. And that was it, career ender, 18-month recovery just to kind of even be able to do anything athletic again. So at that point, I sort of fell into a pretty, as you can imagine, deep, I don't know where I fit on this planet, So I reverted back to music, started writing a ton of songs again. This is maybe when I was 21, 22. And then threw a band together to kind of tour those songs. And we had a good bit of success here in the Northeast, just kind of touring that. And then like a lot of bands do in that history, we fell apart, lives, careers, families, kids, the whole thing. And, for me, it took the beginning of COVID to wipe everything out. And my wife, who's been my best friend for 18 years, one morning I was drinking a lot. I was eating terribly. I was not working out, not taking care of myself. She came over to me on the couch, like crying. And she was like, you need to find a way to work music back in your life again, because you're a better person when you do it. And at that point, I was like, uh, are you sure? Because you know what that road's like, you know what it is. I'm getting emotional talking about it. But she knows what that means to me, and how much my future and our future together relied on me taking that path again. So over the past 3 years, I've been, as you know, writing like a maniac and doing every possible thing that I can with every breath I have and every day to take a step forward, to learn, to become better, to be more in tune with my surroundings, to write with better people, build better relationships, and just be a better version of myself as a musician and a songwriter. So for me, my journey, I don't know if it was long, weaved in and out on some strange back roads, but I'm just very, very blessed because it all comes back to the people that had shaped and sort of advised me to take certain turns, and all of it meant sticking with music in my life. It's who I am. It's what I do, and that's what I'll take to the grave with me. So, not to get all sappy and right away, right off the bat, but it's the truth.
You know what? That's what good songwriting is all about. It's all about emotional connection. So just let it flow, man.
I got the Kleenex over here. I promise I won't be like that the whole time, but
even if you are, no shame, no judgment.
Cheaper than a therapist.
I'd like to think so. It's funny you mentioned the pandemic, and that is really what, in conjunction with the birth of my second child, really reshaped my engagement with music and songwriting. Before then, our paths are incredibly similar. I mean, incredibly similar, minus the sports piece. You were a football player. I was a boxer, but there's no collegiate boxing in like there is football. And also, it's incredibly hard to play guitar when your hands are swollen from boxing. So, but our paths are very similar. And I think that's one reason why the pandemic gave people like us almost a redo, a reset. It gave us time to think and really reprioritize, and especially musicians that are parents. And I don't know if you felt this way, but I totally felt this way, where I had this second child. I've got my 5-year-old or 3-year-old at the time. We're all at home together, we're not going anywhere. And I'm like, man, these kids are looking at me, not just what I say, but they're looking at what I do and how I act. And they're looking and watching about how I engage with the world. And I want them to have a passion. I want them to understand that they can, in fact, follow their dreams. I know that's cheesy, but they can. And the only way they're going to learn that is to watch a parent or someone close to them do that. And that was a huge, I don't know if advocate is the right word, or that was a huge piece to get me back into music, was having my kids around and them watching me and kind of, oh, wow, I have to be a role model now.
Yeah.
And
it's an amazing thing. You're so right, but keep going. I'm relating 100%. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely. And I look back at my upbringing. Both of my parents were musicians, full-time, and they would kind of alternate tours, or one was at home, and people would probably say, man, that can't be a stable home life. And I'm like, honestly, it was amazing. I got full attention of one parent, maybe not both at the same time, but also I got to see my parents live out their dreams. They didn't make thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's not what it's necessarily about, and it kind of showed me that, well, if you're good at something like my parents did, they encouraged me, and I want to be able to do the same thing.
Absolutely. No, you're so right. That the whole reason, other than my wife, giving me the kick in the ass to get my shit together, excuse my French, but, is very, very much the same thing. It's a legacy thing for me. If I don't take, especially after that time where you're sitting and you can't do anything that, with family members, friends, loved ones, just to get together for a backyard barbecue, everything's shut down. So it really, to your point, made you kind of reprioritize and rethink what are the things that truly matter, because tomorrow, it was very apparent, was very sketchy and not guaranteed and very ambiguous in the future. So it kind of made you think in terms of, really dialing in the priority and the things that mean a lot to you. And there's no greater joy for me, at least in this phase of my life, than the blessing that I have in either playing music and having my kids there for them to see it, and the reaction that they have, regardless of if they like the music or not. They're too young to really maybe consume it yet. But to your point, giving them the gift of seeing the work that goes into it, for me, is the biggest thing. The result, all those other things, the accolades, that's great if they ever happen. But for me, I'm setting a standard in our home that whatever it is, it could be cooking, it could be math, it could be riding a bicycle. It doesn't matter to me. If there's something that you want to chase, you will have my full blessing and full support, monetarily, my time, my resources, whatever, to do whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you're showing me and yourself that you're putting in that work every single breath that you take to get better at what you're doing, and make that commitment to yourself first, and then everything else will follow in that footstep. And that's the example that I want to set for my kids, and very much sounds like the same that you're doing,
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about where you're at currently. What's been going on since that pandemic? Where are you professionally, and what are your goals?
Oh man. Well, it all started with a bunch of songs, and I say a bunch, and you can attest to this because we had a couple in together as well. There was a catalog I had written in fragments of about 125 songs that I was stockpiling, didn't know what to do with. Put some out on SoundCloud just to see if do people even, does this make sense to anyone? Am I going down a weird path? But that led pretty quickly to us getting asked to open for Miranda Lambert and Brett Young and Brantley Gilbert and some others over the past about 18 months or so. So we're still very, very new to this. I have 4 or 5 singles out that I've put out just to streaming platforms, one of which we put out to country radio about a year ago, called Good Love, and it got picked up by 90 stations. So we had a really good run with that, and we recently signed with Forward Music Management Group. Brad Austin, who's an amazing, legendary guy in the industry, was at country radio for 28 years. And last night, if my voice is hoarse, we played a show with Sam Grow up here in Pennsylvania, and we were out pretty late. Sam's a legendary cigar smoker, so we had quite a few of those last night. But anyway, I think our journey has been kind of drinking from the fire hose, diving into the deep end with cement blocks on our feet. Like, hey, the universe, you asked the universe for all this, and it's just happening very quick. But I have an EP, the first one, coming out, we're hoping end of April at this point. And then a fast follow project towards the end of this year. So a ton of stuff we've been working on for a while will finally be released and out in the world this year.
Well, I know I can't wait to hear it. I'm sure all your fans can't wait to hear it. You mentioned 2 things, and I want to talk about both of them. First, I want to talk about promoting a radio single as an independent artist. And then secondly, I want to talk about jumping into the deep end with cement shoes on, and why that is the only way to approach a music career. So let's talk about the radio promotion first. How did you promote a country single, as an independent artist?
Yeah, I took maybe a little bit of an unconventional path, again, just because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't grow up in the industry to this degree, especially in country. So I just try to consume myself with every possible thing that I could, that watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts like this, and just understanding kind of best practice. So I was advised by a producer of mine that I'd worked on a song with, who helped me work on Good Love. And he said, hey, I worked with a lot of indie artists, and we help kind of promote and get these songs out to radio. So he had helped me kind of package it, and we distributed through a platform called Play MPE, which is, you can be indie or you could be a label doing that. And you put your little press kit together, you put the release date in and the ad date and all the information about the song, where people can stream it and all your music. And then for an independent artist, you really just kind of throw your hands up and wait for the date to come and see who adds it on ad day. And we were kind of watching it pretty closely and making sure that we sent follow-up emails and tried to connect with all the DJs that were spinning it, or the PDs that were spinning it. And we kind of watched over about a 2-week period, and it was one of those weird anomaly songs that to the promoter's credit, right timing, right follow-ups, and just kind of stayed on it like you're running any other business. And we had a good run with it. So I probably plan to do that several more times as an indie this year, unless at some point there's a different path for us. But that's at least how I did it.
I want to hit on one thing before we move into that second part, is that radio is still a valid format. Maybe not for every single type of artist or genre, but in country music, radio is still an incredibly valid format.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to. It's a weird world, man. Like you can go direct to consumer with your music through all the DSPs, as all of us know, the Spotify's, iTunes, Apple Music, everything else. But in country especially, there's still something to be said for shooting your shot. You don't know what's going to hit. And there's so many good independent artists out there right now. The competition is probably more than it's ever been. You can attest to that. There's however many thousands of people new to town every day, and they're all vying for that spot. But I think if you take the time to sort of cultivate that one-to-one feel with everyone who interacts with your music, and just let that snowball build over time, radio is still definitely a very important factor, at least our strategy with forward music management going forward this year.
So let's talk about point number 2, and that is jumping in the deep end, head first, covered in cement, straight to the bottom. This is the way that I approach almost everything in life, good, bad, or different, but I find out really quick if I want to do something long term. So I really want to hear your thoughts on how that strategy of really diving in head first, going straight to the deep end, how has that affected your life and your career?
If nothing else, it's helped me weed out all of the other stuff that I realize now that I just don't care about. And that could be any waste of my time that deviates off of my plan. I'm just not interested. It could be, I hate to, I don't even want to say it this way because it's not what I mean by it, but it could be relationships. It could be spending time doing just dumb stuff for wasting effort, doing one thing or another. It's really helped me focus on there is a singular path and a goal for me, our band, and the writers and everyone associated with this project. And it's very simple formula for us. It's write the absolute best songs that we can, build relationships with the people around us, and treat everybody like family. And don't ever lose sight of those two things. And that's anyone we bring into the band. We just brought an amazing fiddle player in, George Flair, played with us last night. And in the first email that we send out, that's kind of like what we say. It's like, look, you're joining a whole new family that you didn't even know you had yet. And we just expect that everyone kind of treats each other and those 3 simple rules with, with rigor, and you defend it. So, for us, it's like, I'm willing to do everything that I can, spend every dollar that I have, all my time and all my focus and energy on that singular thing, knowing that it's not just me that's relying on our success. It's my family, it's our band, it's our management team, it's the co-writers, like I'm sure we're going to write a million more, which is great. So I look at us like a community of people that I'm just in a fortunate seat to be one of the people that has a, decision-making board member seat at the table. And I try to be as collaborative as possible. But at the end of the day, I'm protecting the community, and guiding us towards our North Star and our goals. And so, diving head first is the only way that I know how to do things, because I'm protective of everybody else's efforts and all their time, and all the bandwidth and time away from their families that everybody else is putting towards this. So I'm kind of the gatekeeper of, or the protector of everybody's time and attention. So
another way to look at that, if that type of verbiage scares some people, and it might, and rightfully so, jumping in head first, well, boil it down to something as simple as inaction or action, right? Because if you're acting on something, you're doing it, in a very Yoda type mentality with music. It's there is no try. There's do or do not.
You're exactly right.
So if that verbiage scares you about jumping head first, boil it down to an action. I cannot believe I'm going to say this, because I'm a parent of 2 girls and I've seen Frozen and Frozen 2 8 million times. All you can do is the next right thing. Take that
That's
next
right.
step. And if you know the soundtrack, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's all you can do, is just act.
Yeah. If the foundation is very principally correct, like for me, again, it was my wife telling me very simply, you need to work music back into your life because you're a better person when you do. That for me is the foundation for all of this. I have an amazingly supportive best friend and partner and wife and mother of my kids that gave me that gift, as I was in a really terrible place mentally. So for me, again, I'm protective of that, and also very selective of the people that I let into this community. But once you're in, it's just, we're going to keep this snowball rolling. I can't stop. It's who I am. It's the only thing I know to do.
You are a country music artist based in Pennsylvania, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I want everyone to know that you don't have to be in Nashville. You don't have to. Honestly, it's probably easier not being in Nashville. I can attest to that. I am in Nashville. I am a local. I was born here. And I'd assume it's just like Los Angeles, but for actors. Everybody, every single person here is an artist. Every single person's a musician, songwriter, manager, or up and coming one of those things. And the talent pool is ungodly huge. So it is very hard to make a splash here. However, if you make a splash, you're closer to the action per se, but you don't have to be in Nashville to make waves. And I think you are the perfect, example of that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, look, I feel very connected to it. Just, a lot of the relationships we have with writers and venues, and, our management team is obviously there. So there's definitely a deep connection and affinity for town. And I'm there quite a bit, every month to 6 weeks or so. For me, it was truly, I kicked off this career at a phase in my life where I can't uproot my entire family right now unless there was a true reason that I needed to be somewhere every single day in town. But to your point, I know a lot of people, a lot of writers, Mike Calley's one of them, who's a good friend of both of ours, and others that are across the country and even the world, that are writing and playing country music that, that don't live in town. While there's definitely a lot of elements to our music and my music that is country, I like to write really good songs, kind of regardless of what that turns out being. So for me, it's the song and the guitar first and foremost of everything. But Nashville's been great and kind of adopted us and just been good to us, from like a streaming and community perspective. And but I think more purely than that, the songwriting community, I think, kind of comes first. At least for me and for what I do. And really for that, you can be anywhere on earth, as you know. So it's kind of a little bit of a blend of both, I would say. But
let's talk about songwriting. Let's talk about that. What is your process? Because not only are you a successful artist, you are also a successful songwriter. And everyone's approach to songwriting is different. I think our approach is very similar because both of us came from the rock community. And when you're in a rock band, you do nothing but co-write. Like you're in a room with 3, 4, 5, 6 other people and you're banging out riffs. You're putting them together. Yep. Someone might come with a lyric, someone might come with a melody, but realistically, you're all kind of in the same room knocking it out. And that has paid dividends for me because when I'm a NSAI member, and Jill, who's the director of membership, knows that if she has someone coming in that is a really talented writer, but who's really young or really green, she'll send them to me because she knows that I've been co-writing for 26 years essentially. Yep. And it's really easy for me to just kind of teach them how to do it and let them take down their guard. This is no longer a singular introspective moment. It is now two people sharing ideas. So yeah. I would love to hear how maybe your early career has, maybe it hasn't, but how that's influenced your songwriting and what's your approach to songwriting now?
Yeah, man, great questions. And first of all, that's really cool. And they're not going to any better person than you to, learn some of that stuff. But I think for me, it's, it definitely, I can call upon all of those experiences for years being in bands and being the drummer of the band as the principal songwriter for the bands I was in, just not fronting and performing the vocal of it. So it's a little bit of a different perspective where I would start by writing a song on the guitar, then hop on the drums to sort of round out. So I was almost like a producer within the band without performing the vocal. So I sort of had to know all the parts in my head well enough that I could perform them, but then the other people in the band could collaborate and add their own flavor and their own sauce to it. That helps me tremendously because I was very fortunate growing up to be in bands where just best idea won, and we shaped a sound around that. And there weren't egos, despite us all being friends and buddies, being in the high school and college band with your friends that you grew up in. But to your point, that teaches you a lot because it's very different than sitting in your room by yourself with your own feelings and emotions and writing a song. This is like you're building the plane while you're flying it. You're physically hitting the drum and you're playing a guitar riff and you're trying to make it all blend and meld together live in a in a weird kind of scientific, alchemy. So I think any good songwriter that I've been around has had some kind of an experience like that. They've been in a band, they've been a guitar player, they've been a producer, and they've just been around it and gotten those reps over the years. And to your point, with someone new to town who's green, who has maybe ideas or thoughts or concepts written down, not fully formed songs yet, I think, like you were saying, my advice would be go consume and be a part of as many co-writes as you can. Hop in to a band if you can learn one instrument better than another, just to get those reps and just see it from all those different perspectives, because it'll just round out your skill set and your communication and collaboration skills a little better too.
One thing that you may do, I know that it's been really effective for me, is that I take 100 co-writes and I kind of narrow it down to like 5, 10 people that, man, we work really well together. Like you, myself, and Mike Callie, I think have a really, really nice back and forth when we write songs. I have another group. I have Shane Grove and David Wade.
Love Shane. Yeah,
Shane's the best. I love Shane. And Shane's a lyric guy, right? He'll be 1,000% authentic with you and say, I don't do music, I don't know melody, but the guy's an incredible lyricist and he can shape the ideas really well. And then I co-write with a good buddy of mine, Todd, and this really incredible drummer, but he's also an incredible artist in his own right, Jared Gibson. We write pop stuff together. That's all we write. And I've got another guy that I write with, Andrew Weaver, who is an acoustic pop thing, and that's all we write. But what I'm getting at is that I've kind of narrowed down my tribe. And now I have the opportunity to, let's say that, Matt, you and I write this really incredible song. We get 80% of the way, but it's morphed into something. Maybe we set out to write a country song, but it's clearly morphing into something more pop and we just can't finish it. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, let me call Andrew or let me call Jared and let's do another co-write and finish it with folks who are a little more adept in that area than we are. I think that understanding your strengths and your weaknesses is a very important factor when it comes to songwriting.
That's an amazing point. And a couple of those guys, I love writing with Shane. I miss writing with Shane, and you as well, of course. I think my next single coming out was written by me, Mike Callie, and Shane. We wrote a song called Once Upon a Lime, loosely based on a spring break story about drinking tequila, as you can imagine.
Loosely, I'm sure.
Yeah, very loosely. But yeah, what's funny, one of the first publisher conversations I had years ago when I first, kind of broke into the scene, I guess, if you want to call it that, just did a couple of co-writes with this woman, and she very quickly identified, like, hey, you're very clearly a melody guy. And I was like, I always kind of fashioned myself a lyricist too, but that's fine. And she was like, no, that's not a knock on on you or the lyrics, but it's a differentiated thing, because very quickly you can adapt and come up with a really good hook or a really good melody to something that I just wrote. And I was like, oh, well, first of all, thank you for the feedback. I didn't know that. But it is funny, in different rooms, you kind of play that different role. And over time, once you get 100, 200, 300 writes under your belt, you sort of know the other pieces or the other types of writers that you gravitate towards, to fill out that perfect room. And it could be a genre thing. It could be a style thing, a vocal thing, a playing style thing, lyric versus melody versus editor versus kind of the driver and the concept person. So there's a lot within just songwriting, there's a million different flavors of the type of writer that you are. So that's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. And one thing that I definitely want people to understand, especially up and coming songwriters, is try and write in other genres. Try to stretch yourself, try and expand the work that you do. And here is a really good reason why. I've talked with a few publishers that are local to Nashville. As genres merge, these local publishing companies have to go elsewhere to find writers, because what ends up happening is they have to go to the West Coast or go to New York and find a pop writer. Well, their piece of the pie just got a lot smaller as a publishing company. So the most effective thing for them to do is potentially start signing writers that are effective in multiple genres, that can perform in multiple genres, so they don't have to kind of leave their house to get the project finished.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. If nothing else, just to kind of round out your sensibility to just music in general. I grew up, as we've talked about, I've played in a million different genres of bands and acts and whatever, and also produced in a couple of different genres too. The one trend that I see happening a lot right now, especially at publishers, is they're signing the track guy. So they're signing the guy that was the singer-songwriter, that was the multi-instrumentalist, that was the guy that all the people went to just produce the home demo, that's refined their craft over time. That is another thing that I would highly, highly recommend for any songwriter that has aspirations of doing anything. Get yourself a little home demo rig, produce yourself first to the best quality that you can possibly afford and learn to do, and then kind of naturally take those steps from there, because those skills are incredibly valuable. Tuning your own vocal and learning how to sing to a click in time every beat, and what different BPMs mean, learning what compressors and EQs can do and when not to use them, how to EQ a vocal. There's so, as you know, and these are things obviously you're tremendously good at, those things are so valuable to learn as a songwriter, because you're learning the science of music versus the art of creating it.
It makes you incredibly efficient as well. But you said you kind of become a person of higher value, not character, not moral, just more skills that you can bring to the table. That's been a huge differentiator for me personally.
Yeah.
Cause I think, you said that you were a melody guy, right? Well, my thing is more arrangement. When we're writing a song, and I'm sure you remember this, but when we write songs, I'll make little notes and be like, oh, this would be a great place for like a little guitar riff, or I'll even jot down a riff that pops up in my head. One thing that's really important when it comes to songwriting, I think, is undermelody, right? You've got this melody on top, but what's going on underneath that can also be a hook, that can also be a memorable piece of the music. And that's where my brain goes. So I'm not the best lyricist, 1000% not the best lyricist. I'm okay at melody, but I had learned over time that I am that arranger, and that has allowed me to kind of expand my production skill set, which has become incredibly valuable. So you hit the nail on the head. If you are an aspiring songwriter, listen to what Matt Freedman just told you. Rewind this podcast and listen to it again. Learn production, and you don't need a lot of equipment to get into this. If you've got a cell phone or a laptop, you probably have recording, you have a DAW, you just don't know it. One of my favorite stories around production is I also have a rock project. It's called Foust. And the first EP,
Am I doing this right?
That's it. You got it.
By the way, that picture I tagged you in, it was classic. I saw that fist in a bathroom in a studio in Baltimore, and I immediately thought of you while I was going to the bathroom. So
Thank you. I'm glad to be thought of in bathrooms. No, no, but so I have this record that has no vocals on it. It was recorded live in the studio. These tracks have been finished. And when I say finished, you can go and listen to this first EP. It's called Revival. And these tracks are recorded live. We're all in the same room. There's a guitar on the left side, guitar on the right side. You hear the mistakes, but it's live and it sounds awesome. I didn't do anything with them for a long time. And I'm like, man, I want to finish these. So I had a weird transition where I got out of a really bad job and I got a new one. And on my drive into work, I just started having ideas come to me. And I put the stereo tracks, remind you, these don't have any vocals on them. I put the stereo tracks on GarageBand on my phone. I plug in my iPhone earbuds, the connected ones with the little dangly microphone. I kind of figure out where it sounds best. And I sing, I'm holding one hand on the wheel, and I am singing, and I just repeat it over and over till I get a song concept together. So then I took that, and that's what you hear on that first record.
No way. Oh my God.
But what I'm getting at is that you don't have to have a Shure microphone. You don't have to have, Pro Tools. You've probably got a good DAW, or you can go download one for free and do an incredible record.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a gear nerd, but I can't afford, the things that I actually want. I'm more, try to keep it very, very simple just for the things that I need. I mean, you're literally I'm sitting in my studio now. This mic and those two mics are primarily what I do every single songwriting demo that I submit to my publisher with. That's it. I do the 2 room mics for acoustic guitar and 1 vocal with the little chaotic eyeball on it. And you don't need more than that. That's even overblown for a work tape, probably tenfold of what you need. But
yeah, I'm clearly not a gear fanatic. No. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll totally see why that's a lie. For those people listening, I have a guitar collection that is just ridiculous and unnecessary. But I like to think of it as a long-term investment.
Much better.
Anyway, so Matt, this is my favorite part of every single episode. This is the part where I ask the guest about their 3 actionable items. What are 3 actionable items that you would provide someone who wants to be, in your case, a country artist and or songwriter? What are 3 things that you would provide them that they can go do and put into practice and make action? What are those 3 things?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. I would say, first things first, everything starts with a song. Everything starts with a great song, and a great song could be great to you. And I tell people this all the time. This is an old Rick Rubin quote, who, if you know Rick Rubin, he's a legend producer who can't play an instrument, can't work a control board, but has worked with every legendary artist ever. He just kind of says, write for the audience of yourself. There is no audience other than you. And he breaks it down really by meaning, if it doesn't mean anything to you first when you're writing it, it sure as hell is not going to mean anything to anybody else, regardless of how good or pop or accessible or, you know, how much of a smash you think that song is. If it doesn't mean something to you, it very likely will not to somebody else. I kind of take that personally, and it's not to say I write every song as this like super introspective, emotional ballad. It just means like, if I had an experience of, you know, a good one, drinking a spring break tequila with somebody, and I try to dive and go as visceral into that experience as I possibly can, so that when I'm telling the story as a songwriter sitting on a bar stool at the listening room, I can take anything from my catalog and say with confidence, I experienced an element of this, and this is why I wrote the song. So I would say, if nothing else, if songwriting is your lane, or producing, or being an artist in that world, tell stories that if you are left on a desert island and you have to sing for your life or your supper at that point, and you are given one opportunity to do so, treat every song like that's the thing that's going to save your life. So that would probably be first. Start with an amazing song, or the best that you can do. And to our point from earlier, it kind of weaves into the second part, is what you said. Find your tribe of people. Find people and relationships that you cherish, that you work really well with, and realize that not everybody is like you. But your little, you know, your little paprika can, you know, put very perfectly into the stew to make this beautiful meal. You and I are different. You're the arranger. I'm a melody guy. Shane Grove's a lyricist. Mike Calley's an editor and a great lyricist as well. That's why we work well as a unit. The four of us could sit and camp out for 3-4 days and probably come up with 30-40 songs. So the relationships to me, and as you get to that next level and start to evolve and building a band and building a fan base and touring and attracting labels and management and publishers, that becomes incredibly valuable. You insulate yourself with really good people that are hardworking, that are creative, that have a common goal, and that are willing to collaborate without ego, you know? And obviously we've been very fortunate in that regard to find each other and find others that are very kindred spirits in that kind of same ilk. So first would be start with excellent songs, or best you can. The second would be find your tribe. And the third has taken me years of therapy to try to figure out and spend a lot of money on, but you have to check fear at the door when you're doing all of this. It's incredibly vulnerable, and you're stripped down and you're nude to the world. If those first two things are leading you to the third and getting out there, promoting yourself, you're going to be vulnerable because you're telling things that are emotionally true to you. Right? You're finding other people that believe in that story and believe in you and the thing that you're building. Telling that story can be emotionally taxing. It can cause anxiety. It can cause stress, fear, doubt. All of these things creep in. But if you're grounded in the first two, the fear and the doubt, you have to check. And for me, at least, I have to, like, physically, before I take a step on stage, take a deep breath and do like a quick 5-second meditation. Be like, you got this. You've done the work. The war is fought and won. Just go have fun at the battle at this point, and just go have fun and earn that time, you know, and take that time that you've earned with your buddies in the band to go do. So for me, that's a mental thing, that a hurdle that I've had to get over for a long time. To your point from earlier, this town has so much talent in it, and every round I go to, I'm inspired and blown away by random no-name people that are new or from whatever small town, you know, all the way up to my heroes, and they're not probably name brands. I look at a guy like Dave Kennedy, who I think is one of the best songwriters and probably the best vocalist in town that nobody really knows, and they're littered all over Demumbrian, you know? So all of that doubt, every time I get on stage, if I start recalling and comparing myself to the next person, I'm never going to be as good as that person. And then all of us look up to Chris Stapleton singing the national anthem, and none of us are as good as him. So if every one of us let Chris Stapleton kind of drive that fear and doubt in our own minds, there would be no other music. So for me, it's like stay rooted in the relationships and the songs, deliver the best that I possibly can, and be as truthful, honest, and open as I can when we're performing. And that is what I've found really attracts people. And when they have moments that they're reacting deeply to your story. But yeah, I don't know if that's a good sequence for those three things to go in, but that's
Great.
we
It's
live by.
incredibly inspiring. And the fear piece, it's incredible how much of a roadblock fear can be. And that's not to, I mean, it's easy to say, well, just get over the fear, right? I mean, that is the broken down version, but I mean, fear comes from a lot of different places. And I think fear stops 99% of people from achieving what they want to. I think that it's almost exclusively fear. One thing that being in a rock band in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, kind of taught me is that was the era of blog reviews or getting reviews of your music done, which really doesn't happen that much anymore. And I cannot tell you, some of the most horrible things have been said about me. My vocal styles, my performance, the records we made. I mean, really, truly horrible things. And wow, were they hurtful. And I can totally see how that would stop someone from continuing. But you really have to move past it. And Rick Rubin, to bring up Rick Rubin again, because I know that he's just recently released a book, I think. Maybe not recently, but a quote of his I saw on Instagram. And he says something along the lines of, don't listen to anyone. Do what you do. Make the art that you want to make, that makes you happy, because that's what makes it unique. If you're just chasing, you're always going to be chasing. You're going to be behind. But if you're creating something that's uniquely yours, you're going to be ahead. There's only one you. You are the only you there is. So when you take that aspect into songwriting or creative output, that's what sets you apart. And I just wrote a great song with Austin Jinx, and I say it's a great song. It's a great song. Well, I think it's a great song. And had I not been vulnerable in that moment with Austin, we would not have come up with this awesome song. And it's a song about my grandfather. And the song is called Countryest Thing. And had I not been vulnerable about my relationship with him and the stories that he told me about his life, had I had been shut off emotionally to not describe that, we wouldn't have wrote this incredible song. And you can apply that to every situation and act, I think, in music.
It's amazing, man. It truly is. What you put out and give is reciprocated for whatever reason, in this weird creative frequency that we're tapping into in this music thing. I had a conversation, very long and a deep one, last night, before and after the show with Sam Grohl last night. And, we're songwriters, we're kindred spirits like you and I or anybody else. But he's really, as an independent artist, he'd be a great interview for your podcast, because he has done it on a level that I've never seen from an indie perspective. But we were sitting there before the show, and we just noticed, like, I wear, when I perform, a little chain with my late grandfather's watch, just around it. And he has the same, but he has his grandfather was a Mason. So he has a ring that really you're not allowed to wear unless you were that person. And he has an anchor, waterman's anchor, around his neck for his father. So he has his grandfather and his father represented on his necklace. But it was one of those things, like, it was one of those relics in those moments where that opened both of us up, and we were starting to talk about our relationships with people we've lost, close family members. And it always, for me, leads down that path of, once you have that connection with someone, it's like, all right, this is someone in my tribe. They get it. It's cool to be open like this, because it leads to beautiful art to me. And when it's like, let's write the next Dustin Lynch song, or I'm in a co-write, and it's like, oh, Dylan Scott's looking for his new, back road smash. It's like, probably not for me, man. I'm not really interested. But if you come in and say, like, hey, I just not to take it too deep, but I recently lost somebody, or I'm recently going through a breakup, or that person that leads with emotion and honesty and truth, 99% of times that's the right that everybody else wants to be in, because you want to be that therapist and in that support community for someone in your tribe that's willing to put themselves out there. It's not to say writing all those backroad songs are fun and cool from time to time, but the best writes I've ever been a part of are the ones that lead with something that someone actually really feels and is willing to put themselves out there to, let other people into that,
Absolutely. There's a great documentary on Dean Dillon. I think it's called Tennessee Whiskey.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of my favorites.
There's a part where he mentions, he's like, I always loved writing with the guys who were just recently divorced because they all had the best stories. And as funny as that is, it's also really true because, all songs are creative interpretations of an experience. And the deeper the experience, the better the song.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah. And if you catch someone, it's not to say you're like ambulance chasing for all the people in town that are going through something, but to me, man, I cherish these relationships with people like yourself that we're collecting over the years. And that's my legacy, other than my family and the music I'm leaving behind. It's the people that I cherish and that I've brought into my life that we've shared some kind of an emotional experience or connection or a song with, that fills me up. And that's all I need. I really don't need a whole lot other than that, because that's the stuff that I'm seeking. It's like really good songs, really good people, and being a good father to my kids, and the occasional 46 LG2 Gibson, and but they just find their way to you, right?
Yeah, it's their fault. It's an exclusive guitar world, and we just live in it. It's
not my fault, man. We just live adjacent to all these 75-year-old mahogany pieces of wood, but whatever.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me on the Do That Music Thing podcast. I can't wait to share this information with folks. And once again, I just want to say thank you for the wonderful conversation.
My pleasure, brother. Been way too long of a time coming. I miss you. Let's write again soon. And thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Do That Music Thing podcast. To learn more about me, the host, Christopher Foust, you can catch me online at christopherfoust.com, on Instagram at chrisfaustmusic, or on Twitter at chrisjamesgtr. If you'd like to be a guest on the Do That Music Thing podcast, please feel free to email me at chrisfaustmusic@gmail.com. If you're a fan of the show, head on over and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris Foust. Let's go do that music thing.